This video looks at the internal details of the concrete mixing truck daily inspection sample application for Alpha Anywhere. This one looks at logging in the user, the stuff that checks the user's identity and things of that sort, the three different types that are supported. And it assumes, the video assumes that you're familiar with this application, at least you've seen the demonstration video of the application and perhaps the how to install it and for testing, for you actually working on it, and also the introduction to the code. So if we look at the code, let's bring up this is what it looks like when you start in for login. There's a username and a password. So let's look at how that's done. And that's in the main logout, the main login layout, and there's the main login panel. And there's some space here for some error information, like when you when it doesn't like your password or something like that. There's the login name. The login name is a text box, and it has the name login name. It's the variable, and you'll see down here that it says on key press, and on key press has, if the event.key code is 13, which is enter carriage return, then it gets a pointer to the password and switches the focus to the password text box. So basically, you could. This is useful, especially when you're testing it. But even when you're using it on on a real device, to be able to quickly type in one name and then go to the password. Password is same thing, login password. And on key press, in this case, it says if there's a username and the password and there's a password, then perform login. Otherwise, give focus to the login name if you do the password first. And similarly, there's a button, the login button. We'll look at the demo login button later, but the normal login button just does a dialog.object.myforms perform login with full. And there's login help and some other help information that you might be able to put on. But demo login calls perform demo login. Okay, so we'll go look at how that works. So let's go to the JavaScript. And if you scroll down in the JavaScript, you'll find a part that says identity, login, logout, etc., and sync functions. And it talks about the three types of login. This has got a lot of explanatory material, and I'm going to be talking about some of it here, but you can read it later in the code itself. So there's using the Alpha Anywhere built-in web security, and that uses the web security that is set up over here with login, where you say has integrated login functionality. And if you looked at the install video, you know about how the web security has been set up. So we go back here. There's custom server-side login, logout using, actually it uses client and server. It uses a server-based, but this is specifically used during live preview and also during, I think also during working preview. And it shows you how to be able to program your own login, logout. In this case, it's just some simple code in XBasic on the server, but you could make it much more sophisticated, going out to some other system as a proxy or using your own database there, etc. Finally, there's this demo login that doesn't use the server at all, and it simulates logging in and all. This is useful for testing, so you don't have to type in the name all the time and stuff when you're doing the same thing over and over again. And also good if you want to provide a demo version for somebody to be able to use where you don't have connectivity and you don't want to have to give them access to real data and stuff like that. And these are all the functions that are that work with them. So let's look at first. We'll go down to perform login. That's what we just talked about. Okay, so the first thing it does is it persists variables to local storage. And that way it remembers things that it knows that it's not demo login. The demo login is false because you're doing a regular login. Now, with persistence, if you look at the, where is it here? Data persistence. Let's search here for persistence, persist data. There we go. Let's go to this one. Variables to not persist. Login password and login password confirm. These two values, don't persist those, okay? Making sure you're not persisting them because you don't want to leave those even in the storage of the device that you're on. That's just good form in this case. Let's go back to, and then is it reconfirm? This is what happens later on when you want to, you've detected that there's a timeout and you have to log in again because you haven't been connected to the server for a while. This is during a sync. And that's when you're doing that type of login. But otherwise, check that the login name is in the right form, that there actually is one. You've got to have one. Check, are you online? If you're not online, remember this is not the demo. This is one of the two types that we're doing. If you're not online, then say unable to validate password, download data. Should it proceed as if I was logged in as that user, knowing that you're going to have to confirm later on? So this does a message show for that. Check to see if I'm testing, okay? Which means am I using the live preview, working preview special type of login? And put up a message to say that I'm checking the name and password, and start a timer that every half second updates the thing that tells you how many seconds it's gone. There's also a little spinner using CSS animation. And if you're not testing, do the standard alpha anywhere dialog.object.login. And this automatically goes back to the server and uses the built-in login functionality that comes with Alpha Anywhere. If not, then go get the username and the password and do an AJAX callback to XBasic testing login. And in this case, I've set the timeout for 5 seconds. You may want to make it longer, but I make it relatively short, so which makes it easier to test things. All of the timeouts on the sample here are very short, so that it's easy to do the testing. And on complete error function, device offline, you shouldn't have this because we've already tested for that. So let's look at a couple things here. Well, first of all, let's look at check for testing. And check for testing, you know, this is a way of saying, oh, a working preview or my live preview. Normally serving, you won't have either of these, okay? And this says, am I running in embedded mode, or is my protocol HTTP and not HTTPS, which you normally use if you're working on a real server. And does my path name start with live preview? This would be in the case of live preview. Not in the case of working preview, you don't get that, but embedded mode would be working preview. If you really want to make sure when in production environment, put this in and this will never happen, just to make sure. And then remember if you're in testing or not, and then return the value. And this is how it determines whether it should be doing the built-in, the programmer type of login or the built-in one. If you've done the built-in one, then let's see, when you're done, you'll get, let's see, after login. And in which case it says hide the message and then perform after login. And if it's a failed login, then you message hide and perform after failed login. So pretty straightforward. If it's doing regular AJAX callbacks, it adds to log information to let you know that you've done it. This is just for debugging purposes. If AJAX callback fails, it puts up a message telling you that an alert message that there may have been an error. And if AJAX callback is not available, we'll look at that in a minute, then it tells you, puts up a message also. So this is for the case of where you're doing the AJAX callbacks. If we look at server side, just in general, there's a can AJAX callback, and this is used to ensure that only login-related operations may be done when not logged in. This checks to see if you're logged in, and you can read that. This and it depends on this function is in testing mode and figures out whether you're in testing mode, so that it can let those happen. But this so that's before login. Make sure you're logged out. This uses the standard log out. On login, okay, this is special code. What do we do if login succeeds? Well, you want to, if login succeeded, then set dialog.object.myforums.server current user to the username that was logged in, and say that there is no server error text. And remember in my session variables what my username is and when my last login time was, which makes a character string of now. Say this is the last time that I've been logged in and did something. If I'm not logged in, then I set the current user to nothing, put an error saying login failed, and return the JavaScript, and that will execute back on the client when it returns. So that's using the normal built into Alpha Anywhere security. On logout, just sets these to logged out. If we look at the other XBasic functions, we see there is this get validated current user. In other words, this lets the client ask the server, who do you think is logged in now? And it enforces a maximum time of inactivity. It's set to 60 seconds, but you may want to make it something longer. So dim max inactive as and 60. So after this many seconds, you got to do another password confirmation, even if the session is still alive. You got to make sure that this is the session, and should be longer than this, I guess, or at least as long as that. And it checks to see if there's a current user. Have I been active? Was I last active less closer to the max inactive time? And if so, then update the time. And send back what the current user is. Okay, so it'll start out as null, as a blank, as a null string. Otherwise, it'll be my form's current user, which is what the server thinks the user is. Okay. Well, we can look at this one too. This is your list sync validate. This is when there is a sync done of the list. The first thing you got to do is to check that there is a validated user. If you're in embedded mode, then I can just get the current user. Otherwise, get validated current user and update the time. And if there isn't a user, then it doesn't let you do that. It sends an error message back. And then in this particular case, it makes sure that only records for the logged in user are updated. It actually checks that who we think server side is the right user. Only those people are allowed to do it. And this is a way of actually checking values. Server side, I'm not doing that in this case, but you could if you wanted to check. For example, if the mixer model is bad, the word bad, then we could send back a value or a validate error. This lets server side know whether you're in testing mode or not. There's a way of doing that using these functions, as it says. This gets the current user. It's before a sync to make sure the desired user is still logged in. There's a sleep. It artificially waits at least a second. This makes it easier when testing to see it work. You can get rid of this if you want it to be faster in the real world. And it lets the server know this is before sync. It wants to validate who the user is. And here's the testing login. When you call, do an AJAX callback for testing, first it waits 2 seconds to slow down for simulation and to make it look like it's checking or something. And then you can get rid of that if you bothers you with it. But it made me feel better when I was doing the testing to see at least a little bit of time. And it checks to see if the username and the password are the same. And it has an error message, password does not equal username in testing mode. And then it remembers what it is. There's no session in working preview, so it uses this value over here. But it still sets the time, so you can do the timeout testing about whether you handle the user timeout. So that's it in terms of the functions. If you go and look at sync, so we go down here we push the sync button, brings up the sync panel. The sync panel has a sync all button and a sync list. The sync list has the list layout. There's a sync button here, and this uses an item. If you look at the item, the template item over here, sync does a perform sync with the row number of the particular one to sync, because you only want to sync one of them. But normally you would do a sync all, and a sync all calls perform sync with nothing. Okay, and if we go look at perform sync, let's see, perform sync. If you're in demo login, then it does simulated and switches you to that overlay, which lets you do a simulated. Otherwise, it either uses all rows or just the one row. This is what's required by the standard alpha sync functionality. So, or you can just check the one row that you want to do. So first thing to do is ensure that the current user is logged in. Okay, and if it is, then you actually will start saving the edits and put up a message saying, "Hey, I'm saving everything," and actually do the save over here. This is a normal Alpha Anywhere save list edits for doing um, with offline sync, being able to do a sync after offline. This is for the error message. If you look at ensure logged in, if you ensure that the current user is logged in, then what you do is it goes and sees what do we think is the current user, and a success, and it goes, and so this is got current user function. That's the one when you actually get the current user, and then it asks the server for the current user, asks the server for current user with the success function here, which tells it what to do when you've done it. Does a callback of xbasic get current user, which you remember we defined over here. Get current user over here, which gets the validated one. Going back to here, if it's got the username, it does an on complete, stops the little timer that's telling it, and then calls the success function after setting a little message to let you know that, etc. So you can pretty much guess how this works. If you're in demo, if you end up doing a demo sync, then perform demo sync. What it does is it actually tries to do the sync, pretend like it's doing the sync itself. It goes through and looks to see, should it delete, should it add a conflict, because there's a switch you can do, and it picks up the values for that, then it actually does it, and there's a little timeout function, and shows you doing it, and then goes back. So that's it. So this is, so you can figure out how to do this and make it do your own syncing. The reason this goes to trouble to simulate what would happen when the server actually has the errors. This lets you check your code that's handling the error conflicts, which we'll look at in another video. So hopefully this has shown you a lot about how to do the three different types of logins. You could just use the normal one that's provided by Alpha, though that's can be a little cumbersome when doing testing, because you have to always publish it to a server. But it has the other type. The other type, you could program your own version. It shows you how to be able to program your own version of that. So in this case, it was just a very simple, just username after password, but you can put your own checks in to do that. So that's it for this, and I hope this was helpful. Thank you.